Hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today we shall be doing a Blu-ray and DVD update for September 2022. So let's of course begin with the Blu-ray, starting off with the Daniel Craig 007 5-film collection. This of course contains all 5 movies with the Daniel Craig incarnation of James Bond. Starting off with Casino Royale, which I very much enjoyed. It's a film that I'm looking forward to revisiting. Definitely, I would say, the most memorable out of these films. Speaking of memorable, Quantum of Solace is certainly not that. I've said before on the channel, it's very much Amnesia the movie. I've seen it all the way through, but I don't remember a single thing about it, and anyone that I ask about it says very similar, which is kind of bizarre. So I'm both looking forward to and dreading revisiting that film. The next two, I'm not really familiar with at all. Skyfall, I've just never seen before, so I'm kind of intrigued to check that one out. Spectre, I've seen bits and pieces of. I do recall vaguely a sort of Day of the Dead inspired introduction, and also there was a bit of a controversy surrounding the producers not using Radiohead's song Spectre for the intro and replacing it, which I wasn't really a big fan of the substitute that they chose. And No Time to Die, which is the most recent Bond film. I saw that in the cinema with my brother, and I overall very much enjoyed it. A very compelling story, and Rami Malek played a very fun and interesting villain, to say the least. Overall, a very compact collection of films, and for those that are new to the channel, you may not recall this, but I did a video quite a while ago where I actually found it literally in the middle of nowhere on a wall near a farmhouse. I found a box set of all the other 007 movies up to Casino Royale. Very inexplicable story. I definitely recommend checking out that video of mine if you are intrigued. But I thought I would hold off and pick up the more recent Bond films on Blu-ray. And the fact that they released this collection as of late, I'm very happy to have these in the collection. So that is the Daniel Craig Bond movies. Next up, we have the Stanley Kubrick movie Fear and Desire, which was Kubrick's debut film from 1953, and ironically was the only film of his that I had not seen before, disregarding the extra films that are included on this set. And overall, I'd heard mixed things about this film. I didn't really rush to go out and pick it up for the collection, but in another sense, I kinda wish I had, since this Blu-ray set is very rare nowadays. Quite a pricey out-of-print set that usually goes between about £40 to £60 on eBay. I got very lucky and got it for roughly about half that, which I was really happy with. But yeah, it includes some extra films on here. We have Day of the Fight, Flying Padre, and The Seafarers. Don't really know anything about those features, but I'm looking forward to checking them out at a later date. The main film, however, Fear and Desire, overall, I thought it was okay for what it was. It wasn't as bad as other people have made it sound, in all honesty. It was very short, just over an hour long, with a group of soldiers stuck on enemy lines during an unnamed war, and it shows kind of their mental deterioration as they struggle to try and make it back to safe ground, and how, with the desire side of things, how one of the soldiers gets a little bit touchy-feely with one of the locals who spots all the soldiers, and so they hold her hostage in a very gripping scene as one of them gets a little bit too close for comfort in my eyes. Very squeamish in some instances in that sense, but otherwise I thought this film was okay for what it was. If you're a Kubrick fan, I definitely feel you will enjoy it for what it is. Otherwise, it may not be your thing. It's not really a typical kind of war film, put it that way. But some great artwork on here. Love the booklet. Very informative. Overall, a very solid release. So that is Fear and Desire. Next up, we have a custom Blu-ray set which a friend of mine got hold of for me a couple of months ago. She very kindly gifted this to me for my birthday, and that is Rocky IV, Rocky vs. Drago, the Ultimate Director's Cut. This is honestly a really interesting take on Rocky IV, which I personally have found to be a very overrated movie for sure, but a great film in my opinion. Has a phenomenal soundtrack, and is an interesting blend of cheesiness with drama. And what this director's cut does is it really does streamline and more or less completely remove any sort of comedic value that the original theatrical cut had to offer, which I've got on the DVD set, and instead it uses alternative takes and restructures the story to be a very serious drama revolving around the main character Rocky Balboa, his best friend Apollo Creed, who suffers a very, I guess, tragic fate in this film, and the new main villain, Ivan Drago, an incredible character and a villain that really does have an outstanding presence on this film and is overall very memorable in my eyes. Overall, a fantastic take on the movie with what it cut out, such as the bizarre kind of robot sequence and the stuff between Rocky and his son. I do love its more sort of centered focus on the big fight itself. And it does remain, honestly, one of my favorite sort of sport-related films. I would definitely recommend the Rocky franchise if you've never gotten into these films. And if you are a Rocky fan and you've not really had the urge to check out this cut of the film, I would definitely recommend doing so. It's a very interesting retelling of the same story. So that is Rocky versus Drago. Next up we have the Bob's Burgers movie, which is a US Blu-ray imported to the UK, but is thankfully region-free. So if, like myself, you're a fan of the show and you want to check out the film on Blu-ray, you can pick it up. It's just going to cost you in terms of import, unfortunately. And overall, I like this film for what it was, to be honest. It wasn't really a movie I wanted to see in the cinema, but I kind of wish I had. It feels very similar to the upgrade and upscale that The Simpsons had with the Simpsons movie all those years ago. And in terms of quality, the animation is very much more fluid, very much color corrected, and far more sort of shadowed. And there's a great bonus feature on this Blu-ray set which kind of covers the upscale and changes that they made to obviously make this look a lot more, I guess, bigger budget in comparison to the show. So then there at least be, I guess, a deviation between the series and having the movie. And I liked it for what it was. It was overall very interesting. It was basically like a just extended episode of the show. Felt very grounded, but was overall very fun with the typical kind of storyline of Bob Belcher in financial crisis, at risk of losing the restaurant, and things only go bad to worse when a sinkhole occurs in front of the restaurant, stopping customers from coming in. And whilst that happens, a body is discovered underground, which then leads to a really strange murder mystery evolving, where the Belcher children try to resolve the murder mystery. Some interesting themes for sure, which are connected bizarrely quite well. So this film really does have a lot going for it, and if you're a fan of the show, I would absolutely recommend checking out the Blu-ray, and there's some really great artwork on here as well. So that is the Bob's Burgers movie. A film that it felt like everybody else had seen except me. This is James Cameron's Avatar. A film that, honestly, for the length of duration, flew by in terms of the pacing. It's overall incredible for a film that's this long to feel so short. There was so much depth and story and substance. Visually, it looked absolutely stunning, and I was really impressed with actually where the film began, since I was under the impression that this movie would be kind of a discovery of the alien world of Pandora, whereas it actually starts with the Pandora world already having been discovered, and the human race kind of infiltrating it with the avatars to make themselves look like the native species, with so many incredible creature designs and CGI effects. With the amount of substance this film has to offer, I will most definitely be rewatching this prior to the new one coming out later on this year. I'm very intrigued to see where this story is going to be going, especially with the return of the main actor Sam Worthington, since he was, to my knowledge, very underappreciated as an actor before this film came along, and this very much boosted his credibility as an actor, and I was very impressed with his performance throughout. So, for sure, intrigued to see where this franchise will be going in terms of its overall direction, and for a starting point, I thought this film was incredible, so would definitely recommend if, like myself, you had not seen this movie before. And last up for the Blu-rays, we have a set which I have already reviewed on the channel a couple of months ago, but I'll briefly cover it here. This is the Spider-Man Legacy box set, which contains the Sam Raimi trilogy and the two films by director Mark Webb. And if you're a fan of Spider-Man or the Spider-Man movies prior to the MCU incarnation, this, in my eyes, is the ultimate box set to go for. The films are represented in stunning, upgraded quality, and the extras, in my eyes, are really a main reason to go for this set, especially for the Raimi movies, where you get the extended cut of Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 2.1 with some extra added scenes, and you also get the very rare editor's cut of Spider-Man 3, which was really the main reason I went ahead and picked up this box set, and the set itself is stunning. If you want to see a proper unboxing of this and hear my full thoughts on the alternative cuts of those two films, then go ahead and check out the video on the channel. And that's going to do it for the Blu-rays. Let's move on now to the DVDs. And so moving on to the DVDs, first up we have Clerks, the 10th Anniversary Edition box set. I'm not a massive Kevin Smith fan, I'll be perfectly honest. My favourite films of his are Dogma, and I do quite like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. That's a bit of a guilty pleasure movie. But I'd never actually seen Clerks before, so it's great to get this movie in the collection, and this was overall definitely the best way to go about it. There are so many phenomenal extras on here, including a first edition cut of the Clerks film, and a great documentary as well, which is very insightful to the behind the scenes and how this film really came to be. And so there's a lot of great stuff to appreciate on this set. It's a free disc DVD, and you can usually find this pretty cheap, so if you are a Kevin Smith fan, I am sure you will appreciate this film for what it is. And the premise, although basic, with it revolving around a convenience store clerk who is not supposed to be working, and then experiences the worst day imaginable, it's a very comedy-heavy movie with so many absurd laugh-out-loud moments. And I very much appreciate the film for what it is, especially with such a low budget. It really did manage to achieve a lot and ticked all the right boxes for me personally. So that is Clerks. I'm looking forward to checking out the sequel. Next up we have Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. This is not your typical romance film. It's a very twisted movie, and as it states, a Spike Jonze love story, a director that I have a huge amount of respect for the very bizarre concepts he is able to bring forth to the screen. And this movie is overall incredible. It's very much a tragedy in some ways, but overall I thought it was an absolute win for challenging relationship conceptions, and how the main character, Theodore, is struggling with quite an emotional breakup. His coping mechanism and crutch is a new operating system he purchases for his home, which happens to have a very insightful female voice delivered by Scarlett Johansson, which names itself Samantha, and as an AI, it learns all about Theodore and basically becomes the perfect companion for him. The only downside is that she's nothing more than a voice that he's kind of romanticized by, and unfortunately does not have a physical being, and therefore their relationship does struggle. It's kind of like a long distance sort of thing, if you want to think of it that way. Honestly, so much incredible storytelling, and it's a film that really did have me hooked from the very beginning, and something that I will for sure be revisiting in the near future. So that is Her. Next up we have a film that I enjoyed a lot more than I thought I would. This is the 90s dark comedy Go, which had a lot going for it, in all honesty. There were a lot of really great comedic moments and a lot of action sequences, with the same day's events as far as the story goes being told from 3 different perspectives, from 3 different groups of people, and the characters were insane. Some really great chemistry throughout, with a lot of these being, to my knowledge, new-coming actors. And I thought it was quite funny how the actor that portrays Alexander Mahone in Prison Break played quite a crucial role in this film as well. There was a lot going for it. The soundtrack in particular was one of the main things that really did stick with me, and was oddly the thing that actually brought this film to my attention as well. Overall, a great film, and definitely one of the best comedies I've seen this year. Based on the novel of the same name, we have High Fidelity, starring John Cusack, an actor that I've become very much accustomed to as of late. I'll definitely be picking up more of his movies. And this film was no exception for his phenomenal performance. I really enjoyed what he brought to the table, kind of breaking the fourth wall for this film, starring as the character Rob Gordon, who runs a record shop, and this film is very much relationship focused, where he is struggling with a breakup, and so, breaking the fourth wall, he talks to the camera and has a lot of narrated moments where he ranks his top 5 worst breakups in conjunction with albums that match those breakups. And I really enjoyed that concept. It's overall very fun and creative in my eyes. And I really enjoyed Jack Black's character. He was a very snobby kind of music nerd, which I thought was quite fun for his kind of typical persona. And this film has really convinced me to go ahead and check out the original source material, so I will likely pick up the novel at some point later down the line. So that is High Fidelity. Next up, we have the Mike Judge movie Idiocracy, and this was a film I was looking forward to checking out. And I'll be perfectly honest, I was really underwhelmed by this film. Was expecting a lot more considering how much I love Judge's other film Office Space, and this was just pretty mediocre. It wasn't unwatchable, it wasn't really terrible as such. It just wasn't the level of comedy I was really expecting. There were loads of laugh out loud moments, but the story was very bare bones, where Joe Bowers, played by Luke Wilson, goes under a very bizarre military experiment where he's supposed to be placed in stasis for a year, and that ends up becoming 500 years. And so, waking up in the future where the world is literally inhabited by moronic people, he is the smartest man, quite literally, for such an average person. And that concept alone, I guess, is kind of interesting and easy to kind of form a film around. Just didn't really do anything for me. I was kind of expecting a better portrayal of that kind of storyline. But otherwise, it was filmed well for the most part. The CG is a little bit lacking, but this film is from 2006, so I wasn't really expecting anything massive there. Supposedly, 20th Century Fox really butchered the release of this film, where it wasn't really seen in cinemas for that long anyway, so it's kind of slipped under the radar and isn't really a popular film by any means anyway. But yeah, as a fan of Mike Judge, this film really didn't do much for me, so that is Idiocracy. Next up, we have a film which I haven't seen in years. This is Ali G in the House, the movie, which I watched this from a young age, and I recently watched the Borat sequel all the way through, and I kind of just had the urge to go back and watch some of the, I guess, more classic Sacha Baron Cohen films, and this is one of the obvious ones in my eyes, and it holds up really well, to my surprise. It's overall very interesting just how biting the satire is, and just how the political satire in particular is just as relevant now as it was back then. Very much a film that, for its story, was ahead of its time. Content-wise, for sure, is not for everyone. The comedy is either you get it or you don't. For me personally, I absolutely love this kind of thing. It's very much a guilty pleasure sort of thing. In general, anyway, where the character of Ali G, who is a not-so-smart character, is trying to save his local community centre and unintentionally becomes a political hero. And I thought that story alone was just genius. The character is so well portrayed. The writing and the comedy is typical British comedy, very dark and twisted, and is overall a very fun film. Next up, we have Spaceballs, a very well acted and overall very well performed and structured comedy film, which is basically parodying Star Wars with so many great references, themes, and the overall structure. It's a film, I'll be perfectly honest, I struggled to get into at first, but the bit that really sold me on this movie was the fourth wall break, where the characters start rewinding to the events of the film that we had already seen, and from there onwards, I just got it. It was overall a very fun experience, and definitely with the typical kind of Star Warsy kind of vibes that it gave off. I thought it was phenomenal. Really fun comedy film, very well acted, in particular by John Candy, who I quite enjoyed in this film, and definitely is a film that I will be revisiting for sure to gather a greater appreciation for it. So that is Spaceballs. Next up, we have the complete series of the Adult Swim animated show Frisky Dingo. This is a very short-lived show that I honestly wish had gone on for at least another season or so, especially since season 2 ends on a very interesting cliffhanger. But this revolves around really the superhero genre, and is spoofing and satirizing what it takes to create a show that is centered around a hero versus a villain, as we primarily focus on the villain, Killface, who is an alien sent to Earth to destroy Earth, and he's trying to go about it the right way by marketing and budgeting the destruction of the Earth to ensure that it is done correctly, as he goes up against the spoiled billionaire playboy-style character, Xander Cruz, whose superhero alter ego is Awesome X. And these two characters and the conflict that they share throughout is absolutely hilarious. The show is very short, each episode is only 11 minutes long, and for what it is, it's created by the creator of the show Archer, if you're familiar with that spy series, and Adam Reed delivers a phenomenal comedy with season 1. Season 2 is a little bit of a mixed bag, but I liked it for what it was. The first half of it is a really strange political campaign between Killface and Xander Cruz as they go up against one another in the polls, with the payoff of that being kind of redundant in a way, as the series then continues with Killface trying to destroy the planet as it kind of should have been. Overall, a very interesting series, very short, only a couple of hours long. So if you're looking for a fun animated series, this is a show that I would for sure recommend checking out. Couple of South Park DVDs now. We have Season 24, the complete Season 24, which is debatable. I've done a video on this, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that subject, you can check that out on the channel. But this contains the two COVID-related extended episodes, the pandemic special and the vaccination special, both of which I liked for what they were and how it further advanced the South Park story by still incorporating world events that were current at the time. And overall, I thought it was an interesting satire, and even though it incorporated stuff that I feel a lot of us would like to forget about, it made things seem a little bit more bearable during those difficult times, and that's what I do appreciate these specials for. And overall, I thought this was quite a fun season, if you can call it that. So that is South Park Season 24. We also have the extended movie version of Imagination Land, which I had this in the collection a number of years ago, but got rid of it since these episodes are included on the Season 11 DVD, and I rebought it since the DVD itself has a really great commentary on there, which is more or less lasting the majority of the Imagination Land special, which is very insightful. I love listening to the commentaries by creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone. And this, for an extended kind of movie, this could have really been a second South Park movie in terms of how high stake the concept is for what it represents. And for an extended kind of episode, this is honestly one of South Park's highest concept episode ideas, and for a 3-part episode, it certainly does deliver on a very fun story full of really interesting background characters that make rewatching this all the more enjoyable. Next up, we have Seasons 1 and 2 of the Animaniacs reboot from Hulu, which I've already done a video looking over these DVD sets. If you want to see these in more detail, then by all means you can check out that video on the channel. For a brief summary, I really have enjoyed what they've done with this reboot. It's, I guess, not your typical cash grab, but also is. The quality of these seasons overall is stunning. The animation is great, the storytelling is perfection, and having the original voice cast come back and voice these iconic cartoon characters, there's a lot to appreciate with this series, especially in my eyes from Pinky and the Brain. And sticking with the Animaniacs theme, we have Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain. The complete series. This is a very short-lived, cancelled animated show, which even the creators themselves were not interested in making, surprisingly. This is very much a show that I'm cautious to check out. I've not seen any of this as of yet. From what I've heard mixed things about it, ranging from it's not as bad as everyone says it is to it is absolutely abysmal and ruins these two cartoon characters, which I'm hoping isn't the case for when I view this. But since I'm a huge fan of Pinky and the Brain, I thought I would at least give it a chance. Worst case scenario, I can just resell this DVD, but I'm intrigued to see what happens where Pinky and the Brain are no longer at Acme Labs. Instead, they are sent to a pet store and adopted by a young girl named Elmira, which I believe was a cartoon character from a side project for Warner. I think Tiny Toons, if memory serves. I'm not really all that au fait with that sort of thing, I'll be perfectly honest, but it's going to be interesting to see what this show brings to the table regardless, so I may do a video on this later down the line. Next up we have Season 6 of the crime thriller series Castle, a show that I was binging through a number of years ago and then just suddenly stopped about 3 or 4 episodes into this season. And so I thought it was about time that I picked up from where I left off. I must have been watching another show at the time that caught my attention, and so I felt as though I needed to get back into this show, and I'm glad that I did. This show very much follows the typical kind of formula of the villain of the week or crime of the week as it goes in this series, where writer Richard Castle tags along various police investigations with his now wife Kate Becker, a woman that he falls for, who is the police sergeant for the precinct in his local city, and so together they start solving crimes and gathering inspiration for his next set of novels. Overall, a great premise, very much a fun series with some very gnarly and edge-of-your-seat episodes mixed in there as well. and is a show that I am sure many will appreciate. So that is Season 6 of Castle. Next up, we have a box set released by the good folks over at Shout Factory. This is the miniseries Freaks and Geeks, which is a very short-lived American sitcom, which I've been recommended to check out countless times. And I'm still yet to watch this, but I thought I would feature this in this update video anyway. And this box set really does seem to have given the show a lot of love and attention as far as providing a complete package for not only the series in itself, but loads of great extras to appreciate on here, and so I'm looking forward to checking out this show in the coming weeks. Next up, we have the complete series of the Young Indiana Jones Adventures. This is Volumes 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3, which I featured these in a brief package update not too long ago. And I've been enjoying watching Volume 1, which I've only seen a couple of episodes, and so far so good. Definitely a higher budget than I thought this series was going to be. Seems to be shot on location as well, which is quite interesting. And the storylines that I've seen so far, very intriguing. A lot of great sort of natural history shown off in these episodes, and some great storylines and messages, some very thought-provoking messages at that, especially the ones that I saw revolving around hunting and slavery. And so this is overall a very fun series thus far for its concepts, and I cannot wait to check out the later volumes of the show. And last up for this update video, we have a stack of films that were very kindly sent over to me by my good friend Tim, who was cleaning out his collection and so very kindly sent me a stack of films that he no longer wanted. The gimmick being that some of these films are very good, the rest are absolute abysmal trash, and I suppose it's a lucky dip as to which I will be getting. So we're going to go through these in the order I've got them stacked in. I'll just read them off as they are. I've not seen any of these, and I really don't know much about them other than I've looked up a couple of them, and some look pretty god-awful, I'm not going to lie. So this is first up, No Code of Conduct, which I believe is meant to be a good one. The Last Samurai, which I actually confused with a Tom Cruise movie of a similar name when I glanced at it, and I thought, oh, that's a great pickup, a film that I wanted to get. Looking into this film, this seems to be sadly one of the poorer rated movies. A vampire film, Lips of Blood. Dearie me, they look gormless. April Fool's Day. We have a trilogy, Once Upon a Time in China, 1, 2, and 3. Road Games, which is supposedly another good one. Bewitched, which is actually New Sealed. This is an 88 Films release. Frenzy. A German DVD set, The Devil's Chair. The Emerald Forest. And you can tell this is going to be a shit show, The Mummy Rebirth. So that's going to do it for this update video for September 2022. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you've seen in this update video that you would like to see an individual review video of. And of course, for more content, be sure to subscribe.
Are you threatening me?